Welcome in, Bears fans, to this episode of Wear and Tear, a Bears post-game show. Honestly, I'm in a terrible freaking mood after that ridiculous game from start to finish. And unfortunately, my guest, Kyle Morris, gets to be a part of this. At Start Kyle Worden on Twitter. How you doing?
Uh, about as you would frickin' expect, I think. I'm equal parts pissed off and stunned still. So yeah, wasn't wasn't a good one, and a lot to discuss, and not a lot of it's going to be happy, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, with that, we can just dive right into our diagnostic study. This is just our overview of the game. Like I said at the beginning, from start to finish, this offense specifically was trash, to say the least. Right? I mean, three and outs, punts. Caleb looked bad. The play calling was bad. The offensive line was Swiss cheese. Got hurt, and I'll have to wait till the all 22, but I didn't feel like there were guys open downfield consistently. I don't know what you can say positive about the offense right now.
Yeah, I mean it's yeah, and I don't want to. I'm sure we'll tear down Caleb Williams more specifically here in a little bit, break it down a little bit, and I do think he ended up on a high note.
Yeah.
But I don't want to whitewash Caleb's performance either. I felt, and I think there were reasons for his discomfort, but he looked uncomfortable pretty early on and through most of the first half, got rattled. There's some inaccuracy we don't usually see from him. Um, so, I mean, he definitely didn't play his part either. But yeah, I don't understand how Shane Waldron really seems like the more time he has to prepare, the more he overthinks everything. Um, I don't, and again, like you said, got to watch the all 22, but like I didn't feel like there was a specific game plan. Like normally, you look at Washington's defense, um, and you look at where their vulnerabilities are and you build a game plan to attack that. And I didn't, other than run the ball, which they did do successfully eventually, and Washington is vulnerable there. But running the ball, in my opinion, that's not a game plan. Like, yes, you run the ball, obviously, but in terms of what they tried to do, in my opinion, the weak link of this Washington defense, especially in the passing game, is their linebacking core. I mean, Bobby Wagner is not what he used to be in coverage, hasn't been for several years. I would have expected them to come early out of and especially with Caleb getting so comfortable over the last couple of weeks with targeting the middle of the field. And the offense got unstuck late when he was targeting the middle of the field. But I thought this would be a great game to go heavy, under center, play action, target some crossers over the middle, put those linebackers in conflict, maybe on some zone read plays. And they just didn't do a lot of that. And that was very static route concepts that seemed like if anything they were running into zone coverage, running into bad or running out of good leverage. It was very baffling to me what this game plan was. I mean, I think first and foremost, if you got to look at Shane Waldron and ask what the hell was the plan here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's valid. Because it didn't feel, like you said, it didn't feel connected. It didn't feel like you said, hey, here are the two areas we really want to attack. Part of it is they got off to a rough start, right? I mean, both the teams, the Commanders and the Bears, their first runs weren't great. But because the Bears had penalties and, funky stuff that they did, shooting themselves in the foot in the first drive, they have a 3 and out. Comparing that to the Commanders, who on their very first run didn't necessarily do well, but then you're able to get more chunk plays on the ground. You're able to find Zach Ertz over the middle because Daniels had time. So while you weren't necessarily able to get into the flow, I think, but you didn't also see a pivot either. You didn't see Waldron all of a sudden say, okay, yes, that first 3 and out didn't go exactly as we planned, but all right, let's now go down this road, like you said, because we have 2 weeks to prepare for this game, and we're able to, this is what we want to do. And it felt very reactionary. It felt very lost. And it took till the end of the game of just Caleb doing Caleb things till you were able to really do anything. I mean, because even at the end of the game, some of the play calling to me was still a little suspect, but Caleb made it right at times. And that's not to say, like you said, like we can dive into, and we'll do this actually right now, the Caleb aspect of it first, and then we'll go from there. And because Caleb did not, he looked rattled throughout the game. He looked like he was, thinking of 2 steps ahead of where he was. Some of those balls were coming out really hot. Sometimes it was hard to tell what was a throwaway, what was a miss at times. And I'm also think I'm over the wide receiver screens, but that's a thing for a whole other part of this conversation. We get to more of the waldron of it all. But I mean, the Bears were in this at the end because of their defense and what Caleb was able to do. But man, Caleb was rough to start this game. I mean, there was what, like 4 completions at halftime or something.
Yeah, I mean it was not great. But yeah, everything was so disjointed. It really, not to I don't want to trigger anybody by mentioning Matt Nagy here, but sometimes you gotta like you do gotta find your whys. Like, why was this the approach? Why was this? It felt very much just like a Madden mashing buttons. It didn't seem like they had specific players they wanted to target, specific concepts that they thought would work. And yeah, they got punched in the nose early, and they really never they didn't rally for so long. They just yeah, I again, and yeah, I don't. People are already saying on Twitter that I'm being too easy on Caleb Williams or whatever. I think sometimes you got to allow for the rookie quarterback to look like a rookie quarterback at times. Dan Quinn is a as a veteran of a defensive coach in the NFL as there is. He came out with a very good zone blitz heavy game plan. It definitely rattled Caleb early. But he did figure it out late. He did put 2 drives together that one of which didn't end in points because Shane Waldron chose to hand the ball in short yardage to an offensive line, a backup center. So, it's not that I'm trying to excuse the guy, but there are cascading failures all up and down the line here. When we talk about Matt Eberflus, I thought defensively, it was a very good game of bend but don't break for most of the game. But I also felt there were some things that were pretty disappointing. I expected better from a defensive coach who had the bye week to prepare, to have his guys prepared to contain and hold their rush lanes with integrity better than they did. There were a lot of lost containment plays on Jaden Daniels where he was allowed to take off. And once he's got the corner, you're not stopping that guy usually before first down yardage. And then, in the Hail Mary situation at the end of the game, I don't understand why you're not sending more than 4 guys. Like, if you send the house there, even, he's not going to have time to get off that throw as deep as it needs to go. You're forcing him to throw it short, and then you're forcing him into the lateral play. I don't understand the play before that, why they just gave a free release and gave him 15 yards to even get in permission or in position to make a Hail Mary even theoretically possible. That was disappointing for Matt Eberflus. So, I mean, really, like, well, the players have got to own their shares at various positions, but just a truly disappointing effort from the coaching staff yet again. It felt very much like that Texans game, very much like that Titans game where they just looked unprepared.
Yeah, I mean, just to dive into that Hail Mary play, that was if you're going to do a full out Hail Mary defense, you got to at least execute it correctly. The fact that you don't have your savior defender, as many people would put it, as the deepest individual, like, hey, no matter what, your eye is on the deepest person in this huddle. That's what your job is. They didn't have that. They had 2 defenders on a Washington receiver who was at the 10-yard line. Like, why do you have 2 defenders there? And then, like you said, to just allow Jaden to just run around when he's got a rib injury, he doesn't necessarily have the velocity. The throw was short of the end zone. And then you have Tyreek Stevenson not executing, where he's punching the ball straight up in the air and backwards where you're supposed to hit. So that in its entirety makes no sense. You brought up the Kramer play. The meatball in me, right, like wanted a play like that, but that's when you're playing a team like maybe hopefully going forward the Patriots when you're up by like 2 scores and you're on the goal line. You're like, yeah, sure, this will be fun. Let's put this on tape. You don't do it in a I gotta have this situation. Like you just don't. I don't understand it.
They
And
had a goddamn spy on Daniels on that play. And I know the kid can run. I know he's fast, but like you're really worried about him running for 50 damn yards when you got 8 guys or 7 guys back there? You can't rush that 4th guy. You have to leave him as a spy. Like, if you get some pressure on the kid and he's forced to scramble, great. He doesn't have enough time to scramble. You've got plenty of time to get the kid before he gets to the end zone. Just really just and the game shouldn't come down to Hail Marys very often. Those things, they're fluky plays. There's a lot of randomness to it, but at the same time, if there is a worse way to defend that Hail Mary and a worse way to just give them easy completions to even have a shot at the Hail Mary to begin with, like that was as bad as it can get. It's too passive, too conservative. The usual gripes that we have with Matt Eberflus sometimes, that was what it felt like. So, yeah.
And it's hard to say how much fingerprints Eberflus has on, for example, the offense. So like, take the time that the Bears went for it on fourth down, fourth and short. You run an RSO, right? And it's a lot. I don't love that idea. Like, you should be moving forward, whether it's through a pass, whether it's through a run. And you have a lateral play to DJ Moore, who I think DJ Moore is fantastic, but that's on a 4th and 1. I just don't want to run that. That makes no sense to me. So is that a Waldron thing? Is that an Eberflus thing? I don't know. He's at times been very aggressive on fourth downs, so I'm a little surprised in terms of how they ran that. But you mentioned the defense earlier too. The defense held the team to 18 points. The Washington Commanders were one of the most efficient teams going into this week offensively. You do have to give a tip of the cap to the players holding them to 18. You lost Montez Sweat during the game. You didn't have Kyle Gordon. You didn't have Jaquan Brisker. That all matters. But at the same time, like you gave up 481 total yards to this team, to a quarterback with a rib injury, a rookie quarterback with a rib injury. And like you said, there are times where he's just running around and doing whatever he wants to do. I do not understand how you don't have a QB spy, how you don't have more of a contain. Just make him throw from the pocket. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, the lack of rushing lane integrity is just so frustrating because, for one, this is a defense that is used to going up against, most of the people on it, at least, anyways, are used to defending Justin Fields. It's not like they've never seen a scramble before, and you had 2 weeks to prepare for this. You're used to going up against Caleb Williams, who he is not the kind of scrambler that Jaden Daniels is. He's not as fast. But like, you should have better rush lane integrity than this. You should have been prepared for that. You should know that you absolutely, under no circumstances, cannot give up the corner to Jaden Daniels. Baltimore struggled a lot more, I would say, efficiency wise in the secondary against Jaden Daniels, but they had they don't even have a very great defensive line this year compared to
Right.
their normal, but they had a much better, they contained Daniels. I think they only held him to, I think he only had like 20 or 30 yards total on the ground in that game. They played with rush lane integrity. They stayed in their lanes. They did not lose contain. Again, yes, you could say easily, obviously, the defense only gave up 18 points, and 6 of that's on a fluke Hail Mary. Why are you mad at Matt Eberflus? And I understand that for sure. But for one, Matt Eberflus is not just the defensive coordinator of this team. He's the head coach. When you are hiring a defensive coordinator to be a head coach, you're expecting better. You're expecting an edge from having that defensive coordinator as your head coach. So the excuses run out very quickly. The standards need to be higher. And again, giving up the corner to Jaden Daniels when you've had all that time to prepare for him is inexcusable. And then just everything about the Hail Mary and the drive leading up to it, inexcusable. Just critical, conservative in the wrong moments, when just a little bit of aggression. Again, they're behind the 50. He literally had almost 13 seconds to throw on that Hail Mary. That's how much time he had to buy just to get that throw off. Do the math in your head and realize that you are much likelier to win if you don't give him that much time to throw. Send 5 guys, send 6 guys, send more than they have blockers for, and just don't give him time. Make him rush the throw, make him rely on laterals and yak and all of that time, rally and tackle. It's just it's inexcusable in the biggest moment of the game.
And to all those people who are talking about, holding penalties on that play, they're just not going to call it there. They rarely do. They're going to let the players play, and that's just what happens when you only rush 3-4 people. You have more blockers than you have rushers. You're going to get all these double teams. You saw there was one of the Bears defenders got absolutely blasted by a offensive lineman for the Commanders, just because they could just stand around and do that, because you're like, that was just mentioned, you do not have enough pressure on Jaden. So we're going to take a quick break here, and then we're going to dive into some of the specifics of this game and go from there. We got that dog in us. Underdog is a place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in all of your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against the other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. I have used multiple sites and apps to enhance my game day, and Underdog is quite unique. Something pretty cool is their vulture protection. If you select a designated running back to score a touchdown in your pick'em entry and they get vultured, they will rescue your entry. Every dog deserves a second chance, and with Underdog rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose. With Underdog's double flex option, you can even take 2 L's and still have your entry be a win. This season, Underdog's going to be running a special promo or bonus almost every single day, such as pump up your winnings in just a tap when you apply the boost to eligible entries. Discounts. You'll get adjusted projections on certain player stats to give you a better shot at a big W. Free picks. They're basically a sure thing. A player just has to get higher than 0.5 passing yards, for example, for that selection to win. Plus, all new users get a free pick. Download the app today and use code CITY, CITY, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every hair-raising touchdown, just select higher or lower on Underdog. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783 or text NEXT STEP to 3342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. All right, so as we thought and not, just something that we expected to happen that did, and something that we were surprised by. I talked about this a little bit earlier. As I thought, the Bears defense really did what it needed to do in general. If you can hold a team under 20 points, you should be able to win. You have a good chance to win. They only allowed 18. In all reality, like was mentioned earlier, I think they allowed 12 like real consistent points. Yes, the yardage was high. Yes, Jaden Daniels got outside the pocket. He was able to throw deep a couple of times to Terry McLaurin. My fantasy team was happy about that. My real life team, not so much. But, at the end of the day, the defense, as I thought, did enough to keep you in this game. I think that's going to be the case for most of the games this year. It just wasn't enough. In terms of my surprise buy, I was surprised that the Bears seemed to play Jaden Daniels like he was almost any other quarterback. Like we mentioned earlier, there was no spy, often loss contained. With 2 weeks of prep, I really, really thought Eberflus would have a better game plan that would you saw this leading up to this game too, where you saw all these pictures of how often Jaden Daniels throws to the right, how often when he scrambles he goes to the left, and it just seemed like none of that registered, and they just let him.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
wasn't great, but he was okay. He was fine.
Yeah, no, I thought the kid play. I mean, I thought Jaden Daniels. And again, if you follow me on Twitter, I was a pretty staunch critic of the Jaden Daniels draft pick by Washington. I felt Drake May was a better prospect. I thought Jaden had some really questionable things in his analytical profile. Um, and in some ways, for all the success he's had, in some ways there are some red flags for me in terms of sustainability, in how he plays. He's currently scrambling more often than any quarterback in NFL history, which is fine because he's very productive when he scrambles, but he's already nursing a rib injury that I did feel like led him to short arm a couple throws tonight. But yeah, all of that is to say, I was a frequent critic of Jaden Daniels, but right now you'd have to say, I'm dead ass wrong. I thought the kid's been just incredible all year. Um, and he was fine tonight. He did miss, like I said, short armed a couple throws where I really felt like you could see the rib injury. I felt like he rushed a couple throws when he felt the pressure coming. Obviously, he outplayed Caleb Williams today. No, not going to try to pretend he didn't. But yeah, it very frustrating to me that we didn't see Eberflus scheme to attack some of those weaknesses that are clearly there. As Tony Romo can point out, when Jaden Daniels is flushed to his left, he takes off running. When he's allowed to roll right, he'll either run, or if he has he's much more accurate throwing on the run to his right. And they frequently allowed him to lose contain to the right instead of overloading the right side and forcing and flushing him left. If you're going to flush him in one direction, do that. So that was very frustrating. And again, just you had a spy for the kid. You didn't have a spy for the kid in a lot of plays, but you had a spy for him on the Hail Mary when he had to go 60 yards. And you allowed him free, Terry McLaurin free release, a free 15 yards to get out of bounds to set up the Hail Mary there. So yeah, Matt Eberflus definitely, for as well as the defense played in spots, I still felt like the game plan could have been better for sure. I would say for me, the one thing that I thought should happen, or that I expected to happen, that did, is that I did think the Bears could run the ball on this Washington defense. And even though they had some rough, it took a little while to get going, they eventually ran for almost 200 yards.
Yeah, Swift had 129 himself.
Yeah, so they were able to run the ball. One thing that I was surprised by, though, again, going back to my initial point, I was very surprised by the game plan from Shane Waldron. And most importantly, I guess I should say, I was very surprised that, and I guess I shouldn't have been, because I was under no illusions that the Bears' offensive line had magically fixed itself over the last couple of weeks. But I still thought, even as weak as they have been at times, this is a Washington defense that's ranked bottom 10 in most defensive metrics before tonight. They're missing their best defensive lineman in Jonathan Allen. This is not a great defensive front. I thought they would be able to block it up and give Caleb more time. And yes, there were obviously not good when you lose Braxton Jones and Tevin Jenkins in the same game. And then Bill Murray came in and Bill Murray went out. So the offensive line has some injury excuses, but that would be ignoring how bad they looked before Braxton Jones and Tevin Jenkins went out. And once again, that to me is as much coaching as anything, because, and it goes back to Chris Morgan. It looked just like against Houston that they didn't know how to identify blitzes. They didn't know whose responsibility each guy was. They didn't pass off stunts well. There were plays where they had 5 or 6 in to protect, and guys were still getting free. So, very disappointing performance from the Bears offensive line for sure. And then on that note, Shane Waldron not being able to game plan for that either.
Yeah, and it's it is tough. Like you mentioned, when you're losing Tevin Jenkins for periods of the game, when you lose Braxton Jones, and you got to put Karan Amagaji in there, and I still don't understand it, to be honest. When that injury to Braxton Jones happened, I went, okay, cool. Matt Pryor go to left tackle, Bill Murray go to right, go to guard, and go from there. I just don't. This would have been a perfect year if you basically only see Karan if you need an extra lineman and he gets, he runs downhill and blocks for you. Because rookie coming from Yale has not played a lot of football, missed time over the summer, all these things. I'm blown away that they decided to throw him in at left tackle and just say, all right, have fun, even against a line that, you're right, it's not great. I mean, Clellan Ferrell, Daron Payne, Payne got paid, but he's been fine. Dorrance Armstrong, Johnny Newton. I love Johnny Newton, the player, but he shouldn't be doing what he did. And then, like you said, the linebacking core, like Frankie Louvu's a nice piece. He's not like a game-changing piece. And Bobby Wagner is basically, one step away from a pension at this point. You got a rookie and Mike Sanders still in the secondary. I don't understand how you weren't able to attack this defense more. So I think that's valid. It's going to be a good day. This is our section where we have something positive about this game. What would yours be?
A positive for this game?
Yeah, unfortunately, you have to have something.
Well, I mean, easy to say DeAndre Swift, for sure. I thought the fact that Caleb Williams had them in position for the win on that last drive.
Yeah.
And actually 2 straight drives in a row, because they blew the first fucking one by handing the ball to Doug Kramer. I thought the fact that Caleb, and this is not to say that he played well or played a complete game by any means, or that the last 2 drives make up for the rough start before that. But at the same time, what you want to see from Caleb Williams is resilience, and you want to see him handle adversity. And I thought in a situation where he very well could have been excused almost for wilting, with an offensive line that was getting beat like a drum, with injuries everywhere, with a poor game plan, I felt he showed a lot to hang in there and get them in position to score and get them ahead at the end of the game. So, if you want your positive Caleb Williams moment, and obviously this was not a good game overall, no doubt. But if you want it, that's it for sure.
I have written down here resolve. It's the same thing. It's the fact that Caleb, 10 miles or whatever from where he grew up, popped up, super jazzed for this game. I mean, these players listen to the media, all that jazz. So I mean, he knows the whole like first overall pick, second overall pick stuff that's going on in the media. Knowing that we should circle this game and we should really win this game because Jaden's coming in hurt, and the fact that he had such a bad beginning of this game in the first 3 quarters, really, and that he came back the way he did and had 2 drives. One that was not his fault. I mean, I know he got a fumble, but like, come on, I don't know how that's a fumble on him. That's a fumble on Kramer. That should have been a score, and then going down again. And we've seen this time and time again when it comes to being to Bears quarterbacks. Not to pick on them, but Justin Fields, I believe, has had 2 fourth-quarter comebacks and 4 game-winning drives in his career. Mitch Trubisky has 5 fourth-quarter comebacks, 8 game-winning drives, and that includes one when he was with Pittsburgh. I mean, it's not a great history here in Chicago of that. So the fact that we have rookie Caleb Williams with all of that going on, able to put the Bears in a position to win, and they really should have won this game, whether you want to talk about the Kramer fumble or the Hail Mary issue. That, yes, did they deserve to win this game? No, but they should have. So for me, having a guy like that at quarterback with the resolve he had is pretty big.
Yeah, absolutely.
Concussed corner. This
All
one's
right,
a little more apt. We can have a lot of options here. I'm curious where you're going to go here.
I mean, so Mason prepared me for the show tonight. He sent me the preview of these topics that he does. His exact description they sent to me for concussed corner was something in the game that was so odd the decision maker must have been concussed. I think we've got a real easy answer for this fucking one, don't we? It's handing Doug Kramer, the backup center, the football at the 1-inch line when you have Roshan. The Bears had 3 short yardage situations in this game that were crucial, and it took until the third one before they just decided to hand the ball to Roshan Johnson, their short yardage back, who's been effective in that situation. The first time they threw a goddamn quick screen to DJ Moore that didn't even have the leverage, didn't even have anything, just relied on break a tackle, which is just not an acceptable play call in that circumstance. And then you hand the ball to Doug Kramer. That's just inexcusably terrible. And of course he fumbled. I still don't understand why that fumble was charged to Caleb Williams in the box score, but yeah, that was just, I don't know what Shane Waldron was thinking there. I mean, that's one, like people want to mention Refrigerator Perry, sure, but as Robert Mays pointed out tonight, when the Refrigerator Perry play happened, the Bears were up 36-7, not down 12-7 with a must need, where they absolutely needed a score there in crunch time. So yeah, just inexcusably bad decision from Shane Waldron there.
Even if you want to go back to the Matt Nagy era and you want to go to like the funky stuff he did, handing it to Akeem Hicks and things like that, Akeem Hicks is a veteran football player who is insanely athletic for how big he is, who I trust way more so to give the ball to than backup center Doug Kramer, who multiple times was mentally cut from the team for me. It just so happens that he's stuck around because the Bears O-line has been so terrible and he specifically plays center. And I mean, I've been on this ride for the whole Kramer fullback experience and he's been efficient at that. And I've been very happy with that. But you got to know when and what you're doing, man. Like, this is not the situation to pull that. The only thing I can think of as to why Caleb got the fumble is I don't know that Kramer ever actually really had the ball. Like, I think he just smashed it with his chest, and therefore, if you don't have possession, you can't fumble it. For me, that one is the answer, but I'll go with in the second quarter, Bears go for it on 4th down in their own territory, and they go with that RSO, right? RPO, very different. If you want to have DJ Moore run a slant route that you're trying to get the ball up quick, if you want to try to hand the ball to DeAndre Swift, if you want Caleb to take it, whatever the case might be, I think all of that are better options than ultimately throwing give even like yes, Caleb makes the choice in that RSO, but to even give that as the choice that hey, we're gonna go
Yeah.
lateral when we have a yard to go, that makes no sense to me and is quite dumb. It takes second place for sure to the Kramer decision, but if I had to have something different, that's what it would be.
Yeah, absolutely.
We here for moral support, an area to work on. So you can take this in a very negative route. You can take this in a silver lining route. It's kind of up to you. Where would you go here?
I mean, first and foremost, they have got to figure out some answers on this offensive line. I mean, this is not the best defensive front that they're going to face by a long shot. If you want to be ready for the Vikings and the Packers and the Lions when the time
Yeah, your
comes,
entire freaking division, unfortunately.
you have to be able to handle the Washington Commanders. You have to be able to handle Clellan Ferrell and Daron Payne. This is just inexcusable. And again, not even just poor execution, which I mean, poor play, not just that guys are getting beat up front, which did happen more times than it should, but again, looking like they've never seen a blitz before. You have to have better answers at this point in the season. You have to be able to pass off stunts and ID these guys. It's inexcusable to let free rushers happen as often as they could, especially when now again, a lot of times in a blitz situation, the free rusher is on the quarterback. It's the quarterback's job to identify that, get the ball out to the hot. And if I felt like Caleb Williams was routinely missing that, I'd call him out for that, but I don't feel like that was the case. Much like against the Texans, he was making sure Caleb's doing what he was supposed to do. He was making sure that he had theoretically a hat on a hat. He had the numbers to block things up, and guys still got through. That is just inexcusable execution by the O line, the backs in protection, the tight ends in protection. And again, you just have to ask like, what does Chris Morgan do around here? This is not the first year even that we have seen one of his units just struggle this badly at identifying twists and stunts and passing off guys in pass pro against the blitz.
That's the thing too, right? I mean, just the fact that he's the holdover that he is. I don't understand. Like, does Chris Morgan have some pictures of Ryan Poles or something like that? Like, what has he done that has warranted for him to be a holdover this entire time? Oh, also, just saw this because this popped up. I'm gonna throw this in the chat so everyone can look at it. So right as that as the Hail Mary is snapped, there's a video of Tyreek Stevenson just like jawing and taunting the crowd, and he's just, oh shoot, the play's going, and then he runs over to get involved. I just
And he was
I
supposed to be the savior on that play. He was supposed to be the one that was making sure he had eyes on the last guy in the red zone
Yep,
so
he
that the
runs. If
ball
you
couldn't
look at
be
the
caught.
video, he runs into the middle of the pile, and of course, obviously,
Yeah,
punches in
he
the air
slipped.
instead of
Yeah.
behind the pile.
I mean, and this was a rough game for Tyreek Stevenson. Let's go ahead and say it. He got
Yeah,
cooked very badly by Terry McLaurin on a go ball. He had a terribly stupid unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. And I get people can bitch about unsportsmanlike conduct penalties and they're grown men, blah blah blah. But it's pretty obvious you can't touch an opposing player's helmet after the play is over. You just can't do it, and you have to be smarter than that. And so yeah, I mean Tyreek, you want to love that a guy is a trash talker, that he's an irritant to the offense, but you have to do better than that. You have to be smarter than that.
and it's the thing. I love how he plays the game. I mean, I'm a Brisker apologist, as some people like really don't like him, but the Brisker mentality, the Tyreek Stevenson mentality, I think you kind of have to do that. I mean, that's why you just see that from DBs in general. The I'm gonna like taunt you as I got burned on the play and you drop the ball, but I'm gonna pretend like I did something. Like that's just kind of what you need to do as a defensive back. That's just the life you live. But this game, like you said, it was rough for him. He let up way too many receptions right in front of him, a couple boneheaded plays, and of course, this is just one of them. Um, the offensive line obviously is the biggest issue in terms of getting this offense moving. So, but if I had to go with the second one, I'm going to go with how you're dispersing some of the passes and how you're getting to them. Like to me, the fact that Cole Kmet had one target and one catch for 14 yards doesn't make sense to me. Everett shouldn't have two. Like he just shouldn't. I don't need Everett involved in this whatsoever. there weren't a lot of plays, so obviously, yes, there weren't a lot of targets to go around. But I mean, DJ Moore only had 4 targets, and I don't even like how he was targeted. A lot of them were behind the line of scrimmage again.
Yeah, no, I mean he had that amazing catch down the sideline when Caleb was blitzed. When he got there was one play that was wiped out, unfortunately, by an illegal motion. But
Yep.
when they target him downfield, it worked. These behind the line of scrimmage plays that just rely on him breaking a bunch of tackles, that is an attribute that DJ Moore brings to the table. But if that's the primary attribute you think he brings to the table, then you're just not you're not using your noggin, man. You're not being creative enough.
No, he needs. I need a lot more runaway routes from him, right? I need the slants. I need the digs. And yes, the offensive line was a problem in terms of protecting, so you can't do too long developing of plays, but you have to be able to push the ball downfield and especially across the middle. So for me, again, I said this beginning, got to watch the L-22 in terms of how they were attacking the secondary and what that ultimately looked like. But just from the feel of the game, it did not feel like you were putting your players in the best positions. And I'll say this too, and I know this has been mentioned by O'Sullivan over at QB school. I need more Rome Odunze. Keenan had a couple, 2 good catches. He drew that pass interference in the end zone, which was, veteran
They're
move.
drawing up
How he
a
did
sorry,
that.
not to interrupt you. They're drawing up fucking go balls.
Yes, I
Go
need
balls to Keenan Allen. When was the
mhm,
last time he won on a go ball? 2015?
probably at
The
best.
the Obama administration? Like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we? That's not why he's here.
Hmm.
He's your third down target. He's your underneath target. The guys who should be stressing the defense vertically every time are Rome and DJ. This is just it's and yeah, JT O'Sullivan's a great drop. He keeps pointing it out that like basically they've got DJ Moore running the routes that should be Roma Dunze for the most part.
Yeah,
And then they've got Roma Dunze running the routes that should be Keenan Allen's and vice versa. It's not using your best personnel appropriately. It's not using your best personnel grouping. And yeah, you bring it up with Gerald Everett. There's not really an excuse for having that much Gerald Everett in your game plan.
it's just I just don't need him there at all in any way. He barely wants to block, so you're not even happy using him really as a blocker. And then he just leaks out early and tries to and doesn't give you anything. But yeah. So for me, it's how you're using your weapons and how you're distributing these targets and who you're trying to get open. I mean, take that one out route that Rome shook his defender on. That's why he should be your one number 2 target. But yeah. All right, another quick break. Then we're going to get to the end of the show. What's important? Stats. This is a stat or collection of stats that we feel were impactful or important in this game. I'll just go first. Commanders had 267 net yards at halftime. Bears had 90. The Bears' offense in the first half was punt, 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 downs, punt. The Bears really did not deserve to win this game in any way, shape, or form. They were outplayed consistently, not by a lot, but because the Commanders did fine-ish. But to be down, if you look at even by the end of the game, everything from time possession, yards, if you look at, rush net, pass net, pretty much everything, even turnovers, the Commanders are leading you. Really, the only thing that the Bears led in are the bad things, right? Like penalties and such. But specifically going into that half, I mean, the fact that they were only down as little as they were is wild, and it shows how good the defense was, and again how meh really Washington was. But you cannot be that off in terms of your overall yards. 267 to 90 is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, just coming out flat, man.
Every time it's the Bears basically have allowed to score on every first drive this entire year and have yet to score on a first drive this entire year.
Yeah, I mean I think they only have 10 points total in the first quarter this year. So which I mean up until a couple weeks ago they were not scripting their opening drives, but now that they've started doing that, I don't think I've seen much improvement either. So it feels kind of damning of Shane Waldron that we really don't see the Bears offense tend to become productive until they go tempo or until they're in 2-minute situations or until they're in a comeback situation where they like have to throw the ball and have to just trust Caleb to call it on the fly. Caleb is consistently putting the team in better positions than the offensive coordinator, who has all of this time to game plan and should anticipate the looks better from the defense. So definitely not a good game from Shane Waldron.
If
The
you want a
slow
quick
start.
stat on that, the Bears currently rank 31st in points in the first quarter with 1.7. The last year they ranked, they had 4.2, excuse me, points in the first quarter on average. So, do with that what you will. All right, what is your stats that you want to highlight?
Let's see here. Let me pull up the box score for the game. Give me the damn box score. Okay. I mean, for me, it's probably 8 penalties in this game. Also, really frustrating. Another, I believe they got their 4th or maybe 5th special teams penalty of the year, which is just crazy. Obviously, we already talked about Tyreek Stevenson's terrible unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. But they had a drive going early in the second quarter, I believe it was, where they had managed to get into Commanders' territory, and they were looking at a 3rd and 2, and they wiped it out with an illegal. They got the play to DJ Moore on the 3rd and 2, but then that was wiped by an illegal motion, and then that was followed by a false start. Too many false starts, as well. Just so sloppy from the hits principal team. The team. I mean, this has been my frustration with Matt Eberflus from the beginning. If you are bucking the trend in the NFL right now of hiring offensive head coaches, especially to develop your quarterback, and your argument is that this guy gives us an edge on defense, and he gives us an edge in terms of discipline and in terms of molding guys and developing guys because he's a leader of men, then I'm going to take you at your word, and I'm going to hold Matt Eberflus to a higher standard. So you want to point out that Matt Eberflus' defense only gave up 18 points. Great. He's the head coach, and this is supposed to be his advantage. They didn't close the game out. They were inexcusable on that last drive that they were even in position to give up that Hail Mary. And also, the discipline is lacking. The attention to details is lacking. They're coming out flat. They're coming out unprepared. They're committing penalties. And he's the head coach. This sloppiness up front with Chris Morgan and the offensive line, again, failing to identify twists and stunts and blitzes. At some point, I don't expect Matt Eberflus to step in and coach the offensive line, but the old expression is you're coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. And it's hard to look at Chris Morgan's body of work and the way this offensive line has wilted for 2 or even 3 years against any blitz heavy game plan, and not just say that by retaining Chris Morgan to this point, Matt Eberflus is allowing it to happen.
No, I mean that's a very valid point. If you're going to be the culture guy, I mean, if take the Mike Tomlins of the world, the Dan Campbells of the world, you have to operate a certain way. And so Flus just hasn't really had that. I mean, he kind of does it, but it's a watered down version at best right now. I will be very curious how this team bounces back next week, because after a loss like this, it's very easy to get kind of wrapped up in that. So if he's really is that guy, that head coach, CEO, culture guy, they have to come out next week against the Cardinals and really blow the doors out, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if they start slow again, versus again a bad Commander or a bad Cardinals defense, you've got 2 games left against pretty bad struggling defenses in the Cardinals and the Patriots. You got 2 games left to get yourself to 6-3 before you start divisional play and give yourself a shot, maybe if things break right, if you go 500, at making the playoffs. You've got 2 bad defenses left. You need to come out firing on all cylinders against those 2 bad defenses. It has to be better. You have to be executing. It has to be cleaner before I will even believe that you have a shot once divisional play starts.
Next category, kombucha peak performance moment. The kombucha is a premium performance focus-based kombucha crafted specifically for athletes and active individuals. This revitalizing beverage blends the traditional benefits of kombucha with nutritional enhancements to support energy, hydration, and recovery. So, do you have a defining moment from the game that matches that in a positive light, or is this going to be one of those defining
Um,
moments in a negative way?
I mean, I think if we'll stick to the spirit of the category. It's supposed to be positive. It's the peak performance. Uh, I thought that first touchdown they scored was probably the best run of DeAndre Swift's career. He broke tackles. He straddled the sideline. He kept his balance. He outran the defense. Um, guy, DeAndre Swift took a lot of shit early on in the year, and I think a lot of it was deserved in terms of not going where the holes were, not taking what was blocked up, um, running himself into trouble, failing to break tackles. All of it was pretty deserved, I think. But he's answered the call now for the last 4 or 5 games, and tonight, like I said, that was probably the best run I have seen from him in his career. Definitely the best overall play the Bears had today on offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I gotta own that I was very harsh of DeAndre Swift, and I think it was earned, right, in terms of how bad he was running the ball, but also the offensive line was a part of that. But I mean, talk about a 180. I mean, he's been the most consistent part of this Bears offense, and today was really the reason they were in the game. Mine, I'm going with 7:58 in the fourth quarter. Caleb Williams had that deep pass deep left to DJ Moore, where he was pushed out of bounds at the Washington 8 for the 27-yard gain. Now, ultimately, this didn't lead to points, but that was really the first throw that Caleb had that was really like, okay, that's why you draft that guy at number 1 overall.
Yeah.
All of the other completions he had before that were kind of like, those are just what throws you should make. And then on top of that, right, the fact how DJ caught that, maintained it, he got hurt on the play, and then still came back in the game, to try to still make an impact. That to me was where you really saw some stuff moving from Caleb, from the passing game specifically. Because after that, all of a sudden he started hitting a lot more of those Caleb passes we've seen in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Almost done here. Masseter Player of the Game, aka our MVP. The Masseter can close the teeth with a force of up to 55 pounds on the incisors and 200 pounds on the molars. Now, I know you want to give this to Doug Kramer, but you can't do that. So who are you going to give it to?
I think you got to give it to Tory Taylor.
Damn, that was mine.
Sorry. He was dominant again, and probably more than any player gave the Bears a chance to come back in that game. Kept consistently pinning Washington, giving them bad field position to work with. The Bears offense got some short fields and finally took advantage. He's been a weapon for them. He really kept them in that game, flipped field position, and really just gave them a chance to win the game. They should have won the game. But yeah, that they're not even in that game with a regular human punter, I think.
He had 7 punts, 5 of which were inside the 20. I believe 2 were at the 6 or in. I have to double check. He had a long of 68, and that one was at the 5, basically, with the average of 48.7. I mean, he flipped the field multiple times. And like you said, he kept them in this game because they gave the Commanders long fields that this bend but don't break defense was able to slow them down eventually. And even a couple of times, I mean, the Commanders punted 5 times, so those long fields helped a ton. So he was the most consistent and the best Bear today in terms of overall performance.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say for sure.
This is it. Prognosis period. This is our look ahead. Like I mentioned, the Bears will be taking on the Cardinals, 3:05 p.m., another late game. I'm sure the CBS was very happy they flexed this game over to the late game. The Cardinals coming off a 28-27 win over the Tua-led Dolphins, and they're sitting at 4-4. As mentioned earlier, their defense is not very good. Their offense inconsistent, can be explosive at times, and then other times it's kind of like what's going on here. But I believe Kyle Murray's thrown at least a touchdown every game this year. Going forward, I mean, I was paralyzed a bit at the end of that game, sitting in shock after the Hail Mary happened, because I pretty much in my head said, all right, this is a win. I believe one of our buddies, Jonathan Wood, Jonathan Wood won, actually tweeted before that the Bears won the game. So it's his fault. He threw some karma out there that got sent back to him. The loss itself, I'm not too upset about, actually, as I've sat here more and thought about it. Like we said multiple times, they didn't really deserve to win this game. And at least you saw, I'm trying to silver line this, saw Caleb get a little bit more Caleb-y near the end of that game in the fourth quarter. The run game looked back to where you're hoping it would be. I mean, one of that was a pretty large chunk run there by DeAndre, but still. But you got, like you mentioned earlier, next week you have to come out firing. Next week you need points on you don't really need points in your first drive necessarily, but you can't be a 3 and out. You got to string together 6-7 plays, and maybe you end up having a funky thing that punts it or something like that. But you need to be able to score in the double digits in the first quarter. You need to be putting up 10 points in the first quarter against a defense that is not good. And it is inherently bad. It is a bad defense. And you need to win these next two, in my opinion. Because I thought they needed to go 2-1 in these three. The Patriots are not a pushover team. Who knows what Drake May is going to be? He got concussed today, so I don't know if he's playing or not. We'll see what happens there. But you need to win these next two games because if you have any chance to do anything in terms of playoff contention, because you need to go 3-3 in your division, something like that. 2-4 maybe. And so these next two games are must wins if you have designs to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean I mean, I don't want to say I've lost all faith in this team or anything like that. I mean, this is still a great defense. I am not at all, was this a good game from Caleb Williams? No. He got rattled. He missed some throws. It's a week-to-week league and people will overreact. I do think it's important to note in the context of this, Caleb did not. I know he's credited with a fumble on the Doug Kramer play. That's bullshit. Caleb did not commit any turnovers. There wasn't any reckless throw into triple coverage. He didn't get frustrated. He didn't get rattled. I saw this game play out many times with Jay Cutler. I saw it play out a couple times with Justin Fields, where you feel the frustration mounting, and Justin would often, or Jay would often overcompensate, force the ball, make a bad play worse. I thought Caleb mostly did a good job. He took his throwaways when he had to. Mostly did a good job not making a bad play worse, and he showed a lot late to get them in position to win that game. He was rattled early, but he wasn't rattled late. Sometimes that's the best you can hope for from a rookie QB. I think he'll learn from this. I do think he'll have better days against the Cardinals and Patriots, hopefully. But there'll be other rough games to come. That's the ride you signed up for. But yeah, I mean, do I think they should still beat the Cardinals? Yeah, I think they should still beat the Cardinals. I think they should still beat the Patriots. But it's hard for me to sit here and say that they will, because they've just shown they can, they could piss away some winnable games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I saw who did it earlier. Someone did a poll on Twitter. I can't remember who. If I remember, I'll throw credit later. But they did a poll and they asked who's playing worse. It was like in the third quarter, the Bears O-line or Caleb, and Caleb was winning by a landslide. Bears fans, I think, are so scarred by what we have seen in the past, whether it's with Justin, with Mitch, with Jay, even, and then you can throw in any freaking backup you want in there that had to come in, and we forced ourselves to call them potentially a savior. Caleb has shown so far in the few games he's played that he is a different dude than all those guys. And ultimately there are still positive things ahead. We've gotten too wrapped up in the last couple wins and got a little high and mighty going into the bye week, that forgetting that at the end of the day, he is a rookie. And again, too, this whole thing's been thrown off with what CJ Stroud did last year and what Jane Downs is doing so far this year. Look at what CJ Stroud's dealing with this year. I mean, that Texans offense is struggling, and he's not the problem, but he's not been necessarily the CJ Stroud of last year either. So I just keep that in mind, that this is a process. This isn't necessarily about 2024. This is about 2025, 26, 27, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, there's, Bears Twitter had its civil war this offseason, no doubt, and emotions are high, and yeah, people really wanted Caleb to produce immediately, and in many ways he has. Is the thing, he has produced. Most rookie quarterbacks, most first overall picks, they don't do even what he's done through 7 games. I mean, I think obviously it's obscured by what Jaden Daniels is doing right now. But again, that is the historical exception. CJ Stroud is the historical exception. Caleb is still playing considerably better than the norm.
No, absolutely. And again, I don't want to diminish anything that Jaden's doing because Jaden is playing well. But even today, 21 for 38, he had 326 yards, pass rating of 92.7. I don't think that stat line really has a true pulse on how the game felt because at no point was I freaking out like, oh man, this game is over. Just because they kept getting down and getting these field goals. Like Jaden did what he needed to do to win the game, but it didn't necessarily feel like taking over the game. But that's not to diminish what he did. I just think we need to pump the brakes a little bit on trying to anoint him as some general media and even some Bears fans are trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and it's to be honest, it's also just I can't stand that kind of hindsight. There were maybe 1% of people that commentate or work in the NFL in some fashion who thought that Jaden Daniels should be the pick over Caleb Williams. So I'm
Yeah.
not really here for the hindsight this one, and absolutely do not believe that in the long run. I still do not believe in the long run that Jaden Daniels is going to be the better quarterback than Caleb Williams. I think considering he was out there getting his ribs wrapped after every single possession and was short arming some throws because of it, I think you already see there are some inherent risks to playing the game like Jaden Daniels does that might wear him down over time. But but that's not to take anything away from what Jaden Daniels has done. But I'm not here for the second guessing or the hindsight. Caleb Williams was an outstanding prospect. He's unbelievably talented. He's just come off a 4-week stretch where he was a top 10 quarterback in EPA, CPOE, success rate, completion percentage above all of those ways. He has been PFF grade, whatever you want to look at. He came off a month-long stretch where he, as a rookie, was a top 10 quarterback in the NFL in any way you want to slice it. And yeah, obviously we would have loved to have seen that continue indefinitely. And I think he's more likely to get on track next week than anything. But you're still holding him to an absurd standard. I've been crunching the numbers every week, comparing Caleb um, basically to all of the most recent first overall picks since the rookie wage scale. Everyone from Bryce Young all the way back to Cam Newton, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jared Goff. I'm everyone to look at. Caleb is comfortably ahead of most of those guys in terms of how he was performing through 5, 6, 7 starts. This game does not change it. And again, the completion percentage looks even worse than it was because he had probably 4 or 5 throwaways. He did miss some throws. He was amped up. He missed some throws, but he was also being smart with the football and throwing the ball away, not hurting his defense, not making a bad play worse. He never put the ball in harm's way. Um, and that's sometimes going to look like an uglier stat sheet. But at the end of the day, you're talking about a 0 touchdown, 0 interception performance. You will pull out the game sometimes when you do that. So there's zero. My concern meter with Caleb Williams and his development at this point is not even, it's barely yellow. It's light green at worst. So Caleb's doing fine. I definitely have questions long term if this is the coaching staff for the kid. But no, nothing I saw today made me second guess any of the ways I was feeling about Caleb Williams a week ago.
Before we wrap up, let me ask you one question. What, if we're trying to make this objective as possible, what is the maximum number of games that this team can win and allow this coaching staff to be here, being the ones that continue trying to groom and grow Caleb?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yep. What is the maximum number of wins that this team can have this year? And you would still move on from Eberflus, Waldron, etc.
That's a really tough question for me
It
to
is.
answer.
That's why I'm asking you, and I don't have to answer it.
Because as angry as I am at Eberflus and as angry as I am at Waldron right now, it is a dicey proposition changing out coordinators on a kid after a rookie year. I would feel much more comfortable doing it after year 2. I think if you're looking at 7, 8 wins at the end of all this, is probably more than 7. 7 might be pretty dicey for Eberflus after only getting 7 last year. But if you're getting at least 8 wins out of this season, everybody's probably safe for one more year. And I would hope by the end of next year, Caleb has calcified enough that he's unfuck upable if they do make that switch. But yeah, I mean, for me, this is why the time to move on from Matt Eberflus was last January. They missed that window of opportunity. And you're left with making chicken salad out of chicken shit right here. You gotta hope that Eberflus can just slowly get out of the way. And up until this week, it's easy to pile up on Shane Waldron. I'm very frustrated with him right now. But at the same time, everyone has praised them rightfully over the last couple of weeks for how much they were putting on Caleb Williams' shoulders, how much Shane Waldron was trusting him with calling out protections and adjusting plays at the line. I think Caleb had a pretty bad game in that department this year. He checked into some bad runs, he checked into some bad plays. I think Dan Quinn ran a lot of zone and kind of had him confused a little bit. But he's going to learn from that, and that's important too. So, it's easy to point out a couple really dumb things Shane Waldron does. He definitely gets too cute in short yardage situations, and that's got to adjust. But you take the ups with the downs. You can't be happy with all that they're putting on the kid's plate when it's working and he's showing growth, and then want to fire everybody for not making it easy enough on him when it doesn't work. Yeah. It's tough.
Learn through your mistakes. Thank you so much for joining me. That's the show that we have today. Hopefully the conversations we had tempered some of the Bears fans' anger, sadness, whatever you want to look at it after this game. In the grand scheme of things, this game, you could look back on it and be like, maybe because of how it affects the NFC standings in the playoffs, if that's ultimately your goal, this could ultimately matter. But this might be one of those games you actually learn more from with that loss. Like, you don't get rewarded for playing like crap for 3.5 quarters and then get to pull out a win there. So, take this for what you will. But, hey, where can people find the stuff you do on all the work? I know I pulled from some of your stats and all the work you did this off season with some of the rookie quarterbacks, because it was really great work.
Yeah. I still can't believe they lost that game, man. I'm sitting here. We've talked through it. I was hoping this would be a little bit of therapy, but I can't fucking believe that happened, man. I don't know. Only the Bears, man. Only the Bears put themselves up in a game like that after struggling that badly for 3 quarters, and then only the Bears would blow it in that exact circumstances too. I'm still in disbelief.
It is a special kind of hell that we are living in. But that's all we got, Bears fans. Hopefully your Monday isn't too terrible. Bear down.
All right, bear down.